order, if you'd please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, you have a revised agenda in front of you. There's only one addition or change, and that is under the discussion portion of the agenda. We have added Sauk Trail Business Park Lot 18 and 19 proposal at my request. And speaking of the sale of those parcels, there is essentially an Excel spreadsheet that I believe Mr. Campbell has distributed per comments and questions that were received by Councilmember Gearbaugh. Is that correct? Yes, sir. All right. And then in addition to that, there is a presentation, or there is a copy, excuse me, of the presentation from the Saline Environmental Commission entitled Saline Sustainability Office Survey. And I believe that was it. No, actually, excuse me. There were two other supplementals relating to the sale of Lot 18 and 19. One is entitled Real Estate Purchase and Development Agreement. The other one is a copy of an email from City Manager Campbell dated Monday the 22nd. And the time it was sent was 2:55 p.m. Does everyone have copies of those supplementals that were distributed earlier this evening? Excellent, very good. Okay.
I'd like to add one item on the discussion.
Please, what would that be, Mr. Rhodes?
The last one would be LED streetlights.
LED street lights, okay.
Thank you.
Yep. And noting that additional change, would you like to move to approve the agenda as amended, sir?
I would.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and motion carries unanimously. I actually should have called the roll. Let me do that real quick. Present this evening are Mayor Morrow, Council Members Gearbaugh, CO, Rhodes, McClellan, Tahar, and Dillon. From City Staff, we have City Manager Campbell, Clerk Royal, Wastewater Treatment Superintendent Skull, Police Chief Rennick, DPW Director Fordyce, and Ms. Bennett, our Treasurer, Business Ambassador, will not be here this evening, so she is absent. And if there's no additional questions regarding the agenda, we'll move on to presentations. First up is Saline Pre-Pre Race Picture Dedication, and I would ask that the City Clerk join me in her capacity as Arts and Culture Committee Liaison. Mr. Hart, would you also join me up front, as well as local artists Janet Deaton and Del Deaton. And actually, we're going to not be up front, but off to my right. Is this on? Excellent. Okay. Where should I start? Let me start by saying this, my friends. And when I say we, I'm speaking of myself and some of my colleagues on council and city staff. Last summer, attended a suburban summit at Westland City Hall. And the City Hall in Westland is actually a retrofitted, converted former Circuit City. And it is a beautiful facility, a facility that community is very proud of. It's very bright and open when you walk in. And one of the things that the mayor and council spearheaded when they relocated to that facility is to have a revolving public art display. Two-dimensional, three-dimensional, featuring local artists, both young and old. And it's something that I've talked to Councilwoman Tahar about, and we're actually going to discuss this at our upcoming Arts and Culture Committee meeting in September. And at least your initial reaction was that it may have some merit and certainly worth investigating and vetting further. So I'm hoping that comes to fruition, but I also wanted to sort of plant a seed and invest in something that may be a genesis for a project and initiative. So I actually bumped into Janet Deaton, and I think your husband was in the vicinity, although I don't think I got to speak to him at the Spring Craft Show. In D2, or is it D squared?
D squared.
D squared, okay. Your art is exclusively photos of Saline, is that correct? Okay. And so I bumped into Janet at the Spring Craft Show, and she had a marvelous piece, which I subsequently ordered, and am now donating to the city of Saline. So this picture and plaque will grace council chambers long after my tenure expires, and that's very exciting. Not only is it a great picture, which I believe Dell took nearly 30 years ago, but it's also a picture that celebrates our history, a really important and iconic event that happened 30 years ago, the Pre-Pre in downtown Saline. So, Janet, I think if you don't mind, why don't you join me, and Linda can join me as well. We're going to unveil this now. Is it, Terry, is it just held up by some thumbtacks? You want to grab? 1, 2, 3. Very nice. Everyone see that there? I think it's spectacular, and it really, that wall really pops now.
Yeah.
So why don't we give Janet and Dell a round of applause? You should be very proud of your work. I know that I am, and it was an honor to invest in the piece and donate to Saline City Hall. And like I said, I'm hoping it's a genesis for more art to be displayed here at our facility. Do you want to take a moment and talk a little bit about the business and the products that you offer? And you also have a new location where you sell some of your photos.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we have been in business for over 30 years. We first started off on Monroe Street and working with Hoover Universal. Then we went over to Bennett Street and we had an office there for a while. And now we have relocated to the building that Huntington Bank is in. So if you go to Huntington Bank, you walk straight through, that's where we are at. And what we do is we take pictures of the Saline area and produce those into prints and postcards. So mainly what happened is that people were asking us to do these types of things for them personally, and we determined that there was a market for it. Before this came along, we mostly did print work and specialty work that other businesses were asking for. So I think that really about covers it. I'm not sure what else to add to that. Del, do you have anything to add? So I'm looking forward to seeing you. We will be open mostly by appointment, but we decided that we're going to be open on Saturdays as well and be open the same hours that the bank is open. So, and it is a very big honor to be here, and I appreciate you inviting us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And just
Okay.
to confirm, if people really fall in love with this photo of the 1986 Saline Pre-Pre, they can purchase one for themselves.
That's right. You can purchase it yourself. Just give us a call. We're on, we have a website, d2saline.com.
And I
So-
don't know if you saw this, Janet, but former
That's
Councilman
right.
Mary Hess brought this along.
That's right.
So another piece of cool Saline memorabilia. This
That's
is
right.
an example of the T-shirt that was distributed to people who attended and I believe volunteered at the Pre-Pre.
Yes.
Very cool.
I can't tell you how many people tell me what it was like to set up these tires. And as you said, you remember going and buying shoes at Randy's Shoes. So anybody have any good stories? I'd love to hear them.
Very good.
Okay.
Brings back a lot of memories.
Yes.
Janet, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Janet, Dell, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Moving on the presentation portion of the agenda, we have the Environmental Commission Saline B. Green Award. And I think we have our commission chair. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Dennis Kittle. I certainly hope it will be as fun as that topic. We actually had two items on the agenda, if you would bear with me. We wanted to present the office survey results, sustainable office survey results, and then the Saline B. Green Award was listed on the agenda. So the Saline B. Green Award, I'll start with that. This is an award item that the Environmental Commission is launching new this year. It is established after the Green Thumb Award. The Green Thumb Award has been around from the Parks Commission, very successful, bringing awareness and some beauty to the community. Our idea is to start to bring awareness to community members and businesses who may be very high on the list of sustainability practices and are interested in this subject, including watershed, recycling, any type of sustainable items. So the first award is It's aligned to be awarded on November 15th, which is National Recycle Day. We're all very familiar with Earth Day. National Recycle Day is something else we should be aware of in the community. And again, just to bring businesses, anybody who's up to speed. We really don't know at this time how many we're going to get. We're very interested in learning. And each nominee will be presented with a plaque, or a temporary sign indicating they are a nominee, and then the awards will be given as we see the value in the awards. So we'll be back on November 14th with a presentation to the council of who won the awards within the community. And this is limited to Saline and Saline District. Any questions?
Any questions for our environmental chair? No? Very good. Please
Okay.
continue.
The other topic is the office survey. And what we wanted to present was the sustainability survey, just a brief update on what the sustainability office survey was and what it brought as far as information. This was originally an effort to track how the environmental sustainability of the city offices were. This is the second survey. The original one was done in 2009, 2010. The office survey is aligned with our citywide goal of being a green city or recognized as a green city. And it's also about awareness of recycling and sustainable activities. And it's also sustaining our status with Washtenaw County's Environmental Excellence Partnership Program, which Saline is a part of and has a star in that area. This year we used SurveyMonkey instead of paper, again aligning with our goals. We covered the topics of recycling, waste reduction, energy, purchasing, kitchens, and break room, transportation, and participation. Overall, we really don't have a conclusion of the survey results. It's only our second survey. It's not enough data to really pick up a trend. And but what we can say is that there is no erosion, and there's a little bit of an uptick in the responses we see and how we see the city offices responding to the survey. There also is kind of a lack of consistency given the number of years between surveys. So we want to fix that in the future as well. We do see quite a few nice comments come through. In general, we have bins, we have paper recycling, we have common recycling, and a lot of the city staff recognize that we're able to recycle paper, we're able to recycle plastics, the very easy things. The lowest thing we see rated is composting. That's kind of a new topic for people, but composting opportunities are lacking. We have really good marks in energy for lighting, LEDs, and I think that's a trend we all recognize. Sleep modes for computers are in general, and we see little comments like reusable cups and people wanting to have that sustainable attitude themselves. There are other things that we see is ideas like organization of a carpooling mechanism, whether this is individual or actually an organization by our city leaders. That could be a city-led effort. Office city vehicles are things that were mentioned that are primarily gasoline today. We don't have any alternate fuel. So those are other comments that we see coming back. Little things like power strips to turn off computers or printers over the weekends or nights are other things that are listed. And there just seems to be a desire to see if we're purchasing items like paper with recyclable content or plastic with recycled content. In general, those comments come back. If we have a policy or a procedure or something to check that we're using those things and help sustain that circle. Other things that were noted that were really of interest, one department designated an individual or a team, a member in the department to promote green topics. A forum where staff can submit ideas for green issues was mentioned. New hire packets include information about the environmental policies. There's an idea of setting up a friendly competition between departments. So those are the other comments that we see, which are all very positive. The battery bucket in the front hall is heavily used. I think that was also a comment about people like Terry who empty those buckets, and there's a lot of there is a lot of weight there, but it's a good effort to get batteries out of the waste stream. And then elevating sustainable goals such as materials to a status to equal cost consideration. In other words, we don't see an outward visible or vision effort to bring, if there's a cost or if there's a tiebreaker, that's a sustainability or the green effort would actually win out of such. So really, just to wrap this up, what we're asking is that the city look at a recommitment to being sustainable in all areas. A policy, either through policy or through statements or through attitude, keep this topic above, keep it live, and keep the awareness above. Even a frequency of communication about green subjects is always good. It keeps people aware of it, keeps people motivated, and it keeps the topic top of mind. So people aren't throwing things in the waste container, they're putting them in the recycle container. And then possibly a review of policies to establish a goal of being green, sustainable with operating practices, choices where the planning of replacement of supplies and city assets take on a green subject line. Establish a threshold of recycled content for paper, plastic, and consumable by policy, and establish a value to sustain operations and cut disposal costs wherever we can. So we are proposing that this office survey continue. We do it possibly every 5 years. We pick up a better trend. We do a little bit better tracking in the future to bring some data, but we're really asking for the leadership in making it a green city. And these are really low-cost things that can happen in meetings, keep it top of mind, and keep everything flowing in the right direction of sustainability.
Very good.
All right?
Dennis, we appreciate your time. Are there any questions or comments for our Environmental Commission Chair? No? Very good. Well,
Okay.
Perhaps you would like to acknowledge them, but you do have a few, actually, I think you may have a working quorum here this evening.
Yeah.
And the staff liaison. Do you want to acknowledge some of your colleagues who are in the audience this evening?
I do. Michael McVeigh is sitting in the back. Michael's been on the commission for about a year. Bruce Wesley, who helped put the survey together, put it in SurveyMonkey, and did a lot of the working aspects. And Bruce has been a member of the commission for 5 years. And Bob Scull, who happens to be here. Bob is our long-term, 9 years on the commission? Oh, excuse me. 9 in commission years. It's so much fun. 18 years on the commission.
And of course, you have Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, who's your council liaison.
As our sponsor,
Very
yes.
good. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Very
Thank you.
thorough. Okay, if there's nothing further on the presentation portion of the agenda, we'll transition then to citizen comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments on agenda items?
Mary Hess. A couple of weeks ago, I requested information. We were talking about the disposal plant, and it is on the agenda for past meetings. And I had asked, since our water bill went up appreciably and sewer, I had asked if the sludge haulers that are bringing in the sludge, if their cost had went up also. And I understand, of course, that you don't answer questions that are asked at a meeting, but I would hope that, I think it was 2010 or 2012. And the sludge is expensive, and our water bill went up, and I was requesting as far as if that could be looked into also. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Are there additional citizen comments? And we can make sure to connect you with either the city manager or our PCF superintendent after the meeting sometime this evening or subsequent to that to address whatever questions and concerns you have about our wastewater treatment plant and accepting sludge from outside. Okay? If there are no additional citizen comments, we'll proceed to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion.
Brian?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I've got a concern about the water treatment plant.
Please,
See, I talked with Bob Scull.
please come to the microphone.
Yeah, you were, so. My name's Kevin Balasik. I live on Crestwood, and I've been a resident since '91. And since I moved into the neighborhood, there has continually been a odor problem with the water treatment plant. And I know that everyone, I know that you folks have tried to do things for the water treatment plant, and I've talked to Bob for a good, 15, 20 minutes today or whatever. There seems to be, at least the residents that are there, that there's no resolution to that, no matter what you folks do, no matter who you hire, what you want to do with it, it's not taking care of the problem. The last couple of days, or last couple of nights, it's been nice weather. The air conditioner's off, windows are open, and it just smells like sewage. And something needs to be done with that. And I know people that have been residents here, that lived in that area, it's just constant. Some nights are better than others, but for the most part, again, I've been here since '91, and nothing's been done for that. I know you guys, to me, what you're doing, you're putting Band-Aids on all the issues that are going on down there. Nothing's been taken care of. The smell is still there. I guess I encourage all of you to purchase homes in that area, and then maybe all of you folks will do something about it. So, thanks.
Additional citizen comments on agenda items? No, then we'll proceed to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Move to approve as submitted.
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes to approve as submitted. Is there a second? Seconded by, was that Councilmember CO?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as distributed signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-150. This is community event application, First Presbyterian Church. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the August 15th, 2016 community event application from the First Presbyterian Church and to approve or not to approve the request for a traffic control order to close Hall Street on August 28th, 2016 from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Gearbaugh. Do you want to second that motion, Mr. CO?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. It's been properly moved to acknowledge receipt and to approve. Is there anyone here from First Presbyterian Church this evening? No? Do you want to make any comment about your memo? It's pretty self-explanatory, but if you had any remarks, we would welcome those.
It's just for a picnic.
Okay. Any discussion or questions for staff? Ms. McClellan?
Is it 9 to 3 or 8 to 3?
9 to 3.
Okay.
Ms. DeHart?
Yes, I just had one question about the barricades. There was a request to place two barricades at Hall and McKay, and I may have overlooked it, but I wondered if there was arrangement made for people exiting the parking lot. That would be parking lot number 1. Thank you. If Hall Street is completely closed at McKay, then that would pretty much take parking lot number 1 out of commission?
No, they're not going to close that far down. I think they were looking for them to be dropped off there or to leave them there, but they're going to actually come back before it's just a small section by the Presbyterian Church.
Okay, thank
Sorry.
you. Yeah, no, that's fine. I
She was-
just wanted to be sure.
No, that's a good question, and that's my understanding as well, Ms. DeHart, that historically they've only closed that front section of Hall Street. Perhaps we can confirm with them, and if that's not the case and they want to close a larger section of Hall or Hall Street in its entirety, you can send a communique out to council.
I certainly will.
Any additional questions? Any subsequent discussion? No, then it's been properly moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-151. This is repair to well number 3. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the August 15th, 2016 memo from wastewater treatment superintendent Skull and to approve or not to approve the proposal from Peerless Midwest to purchase and install a submersible pump in an amount not to exceed $30,000 for well repairs.
Move to acknowledge receipt and to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Gearba. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Tahar. Superintendent Skull, do you care to make any comment this evening?
No, it's, the memo pretty much spoke to all the facts. The well went in 63, and I feel the casing is too old to try to rehab. So I feel this is the best alternative.
Okay, very good. Are there any questions for Mr. Skull? Mr. Gearba?
Is this the last one we've replaced so many of them? Do we have any more that would be this old that we need to replace?
Well, I got those numbers written down here. I thought you'd ask. I believe number 2 well is the second oldest. That was put in 72. At least that's the oldest reference that I have to it in my files. I'm still looking. Number 4 was put in 78, and 5 was in 99, and number 6 was in 2004. So they're all pretty good. Number 3 is just used so much that I think that probably contributed to it.
No, that's surprising. It lasted 53 years, so thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Gearba. Additional questions for Mr. Skull? Mr. Skull, why don't you hang tight for just a minute? It's not quite germane, but it's still relevant. And since we had some comments during the public comment period, or the first public comment period, can we reiterate one more time for the public record the scope of work that's being done at the wastewater treatment plant, when we expect it to be done? As part of the scope, I think it's important to address the cost because it's quite profound and I think indicative of how seriously we take these issues, not only issues regarding odor, but our desire to improve the safety and efficiency of the plant. Can you address that one more time for the record this evening?
Sure. The recent additions to the plant was basically to renovate the existing system. We replaced the bearings on the RBCs, which we use for treatment purposes. We replaced the sand filters that went in a long time ago and long exceeded their useful life with a newer technology. We also addressed some of the odor issues. It was not predominantly an odor abatement project. We did have some money penciled aside for that, which consisted of repairing the scrubber as well as patching the ductwork. Now, some of that work has been done, some of it has not been done. We're still waiting for pieces to tighten up the air, escaping air around the RBCs, which may improve the odor work at that particular point in the system. The thing to keep in mind is the odor abatement projects that we have going are all up and running, but the problem is they do not extend over all the systems in the plant. They never did. So it's a wastewater plant. There will be odors. The problem we have really is the fact we have neighbors that are so close. I mean, the plant is well ran. I think the odors are minimal for a wastewater treatment plant. It's just that we have neighbors on 3 sides.
Can you confirm for me that in addition to the rehabilitation project that council authorized some years ago now, we also added work that was beyond the scope of what we enumerated in the project to
Correct.
the dual odor scrubbers? Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, we after the main contract was written, we did extend the work to cover the digester as far as odor abatement goes. Unfortunately, the lid is still off one of them. We have an odor scrubber recently installed on the secondary digester, which was vented to the air. Again, work is still being done on it. We also put I'm drawing a blank now. We're misting around certain areas with odor neutralizing chemical, which we just started doing, and we're experimenting on the application of it.
Okay. When do you expect, again for the record, when do you expect that the projects will conclude at the treatment plant?
The recent extension had expired. There's still some work going on. They're now predicting October 1st is what we're shooting for. One of the problems is the curing the old digester that we use for sludge septic storage, is a 3-week process. So it's going to have to set for 3 weeks before we can proceed any further with covering that.
Right. My final question, Mr. Scull, and you and I have discussed this privately and in public on numerous occasions, but if residents, citizens have issues, concerns about the plant, specifically odor, the most appropriate and effective thing for them to do would be to call the plant when they're experiencing an odor issue. If it's after hours or on the weekend, I always encourage people to contact me by cell phone. That number is printed and has been distributed widely. Again, that would be the appropriate protocol,
It would
because the
be.
reality is we can't deal with issues that happened 2 weeks ago or a month ago or whenever.
That's true, but currently, the odor equipment that we have is up and functioning. I think part of the issue is going to be in the future, we may need to look at expanding the current odor abatement work to additional parts of the plant that's not currently being covered by it.
Okay. Very good. I'm sorry to go off on that tangent.
No, I
wanna
just
make
didn't
sure
want to
that-
raise any expectations.
Yep, I want to make sure that all the people that I represent are very clear on what's being done, what will be done in the future, and where we are at in terms of our rehabilitation project.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Mayor, this is actually from Mr. Skull. So 3 or 4 years ago, when we had, pretty much weren't doing anything in the plant, whatever, and I thought the odor abatement was being pretty well contained, what's changed so much from that point to now?
I don't know how much has actually changed. So much is dependent on the weather. Currently, the plant is not running normally. We just had a lot of work done. It's a biological process. It takes time to reestablish growth and just the proper system performance. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we had the digester down and we were storing raw. We just had a bad couple of years. We've been storing raw, untreated sludge in our sludge storage tanks, and we had eventually had to have a company come in with a press to dewater it so we could remove it to a landfill. And there were a lot of odors from that.
But those were like one-time events. They weren't something that was
Yeah,
continually
again-
happening as part of operations.
Correct. And right now, the plant is not quite back up and running. We still have equipment that was just recently returned to us. We're waiting for some equipment to be returned to us.
So it's really just waiting to get all these other pieces in line so that we have the full full operational aspect that we used to have?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to.
No, I mean, it's a wastewater plant, there will be odors unless we address the other sources. We get it up and running, hopefully the odors will be lessened, but I'm not going to stand up here and say there won't be any after
Well,
that.
and I agree with that. I don't think it's never going to be none unless we spend many, many millions of dollars or build a new plant somewhere else. The other piece of it, though, is do we have concerns with, and I thought at one time, individuals putting stuff into the sewer system flow that potentially could destroy the bacteria, which helps digest?
Oh, yeah, and it's still a problem from time to time. We do have an industrial survey, and we do inspect different industrial parks for additions of, it would take very little to upset the process. We've had in the past, we've had oil and gas that people put in the storm and put in the drains, and that upsets the system, as well as certain cleaning chemicals. If there's enough volume of it, it will upset the plant.
Is there a need for us to start looking into potential penalties for that in terms of?
Well, we do have some penalties, and we do. The problem
Or
is
how to actually determine it, I guess.
well, the part of the problem is the system. It's not like the water plant where you turn on a pump or turn off something. It's a biological process, and sometimes 2 years ago we had a bad odor in February or January, I don't remember exactly, and everybody was asking for an answer. The problem is it's a biological system, and it takes some time to figure out what went wrong, because it just takes a couple of days for it to bounce back. If something comes through that's toxic and kills the system, we don't necessarily know it right out of the gate.
But could
It
we
may
place
take a couple
sensors
days.
or anything in our system in main locations?
Well, there are sensors you can put in there, and we do have samplers that we randomly put out to check for that stuff. And we know some suspects. You just learn that with time.
Okay. Thank
But
you.
it is something we're always looking for.
It may also be, I think that's an excellent point, Mr. Gearbaugh. Mr. Scull, it may also be an issue that we should message on. I'm thinking in particular within our FYI newsletter, informing our residents and our business owners alike that it may seem innocuous to put certain chemicals and products down the drain, but in reality, it can do significant harm to our plant.
Absolutely, and I think in the past, some people will do it because it saves cost. It's out of steel, they just dump it and it's done.
Thank you.
We did have a program where we monitored for buildup of fats because they also cause operational issues. And we had a very good return from the neighborhood that was having a problem.
Okay.
So we do reach out occasionally for that kind of stuff.
Any other questions for our wastewater treatment superintendent? Mr. Scull, thank you very much. Any subsequent discussion on the motion moved by Gearboss, seconded by Tahar to acknowledge and to approve? No, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-152. This is MML Annual Liability and Property Insurance Pool Renewal. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the August 16, 2016 memo from City Manager Campbell to approve or not to approve the annual renewal premium with the pool for a time period of September 1, 2016 through August 31st, 2017 in an amount not to exceed $132,973.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Thank you, Councilwoman Tahar. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. Mr. Campbell, do you want to begin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We also have a representative from Property Pool, Judy Thompson-Terosian. If there's any questions for her, but this is the annual renewal. Our coverage is from September 1, 16. This would go from September 1, 16 through August 31st, 2017. Slight increase, 3.7%, which equates to $4,740. And then once this is renewed, then again, you may recall we are part of a pool, member communities that make up the pool, similar to Saline. So the dividend that the board has approved for members going forward for the next year is $15,879. Be happy to ask any questions, and as well as Judy is here as well.
Judy, it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Would you like to make any comments?
Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions. The city's been with the MML Liability and Property Pool for 13 years. And the dividend history, we've been giving dividend each year since 2011.
Well, let me just begin, not a question, but a comment, Judy. And if I recall correctly, my predecessor served on your liability board for a number of years.
Yes.
And it really cannot be debated that the MML liability pool has been regionally and nationally recognized for the outstanding work that you do and the exceptional products and services that you provide to communities like Saline. So we thank you for that.
Thank you.
I, for one, am very proud to be a member, and I'm happy to open it up from questions for the group. Mr. Rhodes.
Just one question. I was wondering if we had any claims that were not, in our opinion, satisfactorily handled in the last year?
No, we've been, when we do have a claim, we work very well with kind of hand in glove, if you will, with the league, and been very satisfied.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gearbaugh, did you have a question, sir?
Just curious, have we had exceeded our normal claims this past year? Has the city had more claims than we have in the past or anything?
No.
Don't you know? No. We're kind of consistent? Okay. So the increase is really just general cost of inflation and so
Yes.
forth? Thank you.
Additional questions? Judy, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Any subsequent discussion on the motion? No? Okay, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Tahar, seconded by Councilwoman Dillon to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-153. This is overband crack sealing. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the August 17, 2016 memo from DPW Director Fordyce and to approve or not to approve the awarding of the 2016 overband crack sealing project to Schrodeller Construction in the approximate amount of $40,000. And if I pronounce that name incorrectly, my apologies. Is there a motion?
Move to acknowledge receipt and to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. DPW Director Fordyce, do you care to make any comment about this?
Thank you. Just continuing our preventive maintenance activities on the streets. This is one of the least expensive, best return on the dollar preventive maintenance practices available to us right now. And it has worked well for us in the past. This company has done a good job, and they continue to renew their price from 2010. So recommend awarding.
Very good. Any questions for our DPW director? We'll start with Mr. Gearbaugh.
Jeff, when will this occur?
This will occur before Michigan Avenue is completed and before we redo our pavement markings, roughly September.
Okay. And this will also include patching potholes and things that have not
No,
been
this
touched?
is not pothole patching. This is just crack filling. So the contraction, shrinkage cracks that occur in the asphalt, this seals those up to prevent water from getting into them and then deteriorating the asphalt from below. So this is not, there's no pothole patching in this.
Okay. And when will potholes be patched? There's quite a few on South Ann Arbor Street and
It's,
some other streets.
yeah, pothole patching is an ongoing process. Actually, we just had a truck out today. I don't know whether they got down to South Ann Arbor or not, but it's an ongoing infill
Okay.
project.
I didn't know if it was going to coordinate with this or not, so.
No.
If I can, it's not particularly germane, but to echo those comments, pothole corner of Pleasant Ridge and South Ann Arbor.
Okay.
It grows daily as potholes tend to do.
Yep.
Mr. Rhodes.
Mr. Fordyce, the Environmental Commission had a fairly lengthy discussion at our last meeting about the hazards of coal tar, which some folks are still using, but
Right.
is trying to be banned in the state. Do you know if Scodeller is using any coal tar?
This product does not contain coal tar, no.
Okay.
It does not.
Good. Thank you.
Mr. Seal.
Mr. Fordyce, does this cover the entire city or just a portion of it?
This amount will not cover the entire city. Typically, we get maybe 10 to 15% covered with a dollar amount this size.
So do you rotate then? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll go through and identify the best candidates for crack filling, and we give the contractor a map.
That's it, Mr. Seal?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dillon and then Mr. Har.
Actually, Mr. CEO asked my question, so I'm all set. Thank you.
Excellent. Ms. Tahar.
Do we have any program for sealing cracks on non-motorized paths?
Not yet.
Do we have any plans? I have just recently, well, I walk a lot, and I've seen some of the paths in the parks have some cracks that look like they could be good candidates for sealing.
Okay. If you could let me know in particular which paths you're thinking of, I can take a look at those. Because often on the non-motorized pathways, we get so much shrinkage that the cracks are wider than what this technique can deal with. But,
Okay, I'll make a list.
I'll have to take a look at those.
Thank you.
Anything further, Mr. Har?
That's it, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any additional questions for our DPW director? Jeff, thank you very much. Any subsequent discussion on this motion? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon, to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-154. This is purchase of sidewalk snow clearing equipment. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the August 17th, 2016 memo from DPW Director Fordyce and to approve or not to approve the purchase of a Ventrac 3400 with cab, power broom, snow blower, mower, and blower, power broom, excuse me, in the amount of $32,345.73 from Jacobson's of Novi, Michigan.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
It's been moved by Dillon to acknowledge and approve. Mr. Rhodes, do you want to be the second, sir?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry to relieve you so quickly. Mr. Fordyce, do you want to return to the podium and provide any comments?
So we currently have a small Steiner brand tractor that we use for snow clearing on sidewalks and sidewalk ramps. And that machine has worked pretty well, but it has some drawbacks, and it's mechanically becoming unreliable. So we started looking into a replacement for it, and we were fortunate that the American Public Works Association last year held their national snow conference in Michigan, so we were able to go up there and look at basically everything that's available in the world of snow removal equipment. And from that, we did some more research and then selected 2 units that we actually got samples of and brought to Saline last winter and tested them out on our sidewalks. And then selected this Ventrac, which is kind of the corporate successor of Steiner. And it's a small articulated tractor, very narrow, short, and the articulation allows it to make very tight turning movements. Has a number of different attachments available. We've selected a power broom, which is our standard snow clearing equipment that handles snowfalls up to about 4 inches. And then we also have a 2-stage snow blower for deeper snows, a cab, heated cab with work lights. And then since this is kind of a multifunctional tractor, we've also selected a front mower that discharges to the rear rather than the side. We've had some problems in the cemetery with our side discharge mowers kind of plastering headstones with grass. So this unit will allow us to get through there without discharging grass onto the headstones. And then also a blower attachment to help with leaf collection in the cemetery. And so this brand is manufactured in Ohio, and then they have a network of distributors with protected territory. So there's only one distributor in Michigan, this Jacobson, and but they do offer a 13% municipal discount, so we're getting a pretty fair deal.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Fordyce. Any questions for our DPW director? Ms. Dillon.
What's the expected life expectancy of a vehicle like this?
You know, the 8 years that we got out of the smaller one is not great. I would expect more along 10 to 15 years. But in this new one, because of the way it's configured, there's fewer belts involved. I think this one will last in that 10 to 15 year range.
Thank you.
Additional questions for our DPW director? Jeff, thank you very much. Any subsequent discussion on the motion? No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Dillon, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-155. This is Drug Task Force Board recommendation. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the August 8th, 2016 memo from Police Chief Rennick and to approve or not to approve the appointment of the Saline Community Addiction Prevention Task Force, SCAPTF, as presented.
Move to acknowledge receipt and to approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman McClellan. Chief Rennick, do you want to make a comment, make comment regarding your memo of August the 8th?
Yes, we, as the Drug Task Force, met last month, and members that are outlined in your memo show who those members were. As outlined in the bylaws of the task force, 3 members must be ex officio, and after talking with the mayor, it was decided that Janet Dillon, myself, and Chief Heff would be the ex officio members, and then 6 other members from the community would be assigned either a 1-year, 2-year, or 3-year board seat. And anytime during the 3-year period, depending on the activities of the task force, other members may be added. We may certainly add other members from other areas of expertise. A doctor, a judge, prosecutor, something like that may be added. And certainly those decisions, once you make this initial decision on the 9 members, would be at the direction of the board of directors. And so I'm looking forward to getting moving, as that's basically what we need to do. And I would guess that the first action item probably would be to get a director hired so the task force can start doing some of the things it should be doing.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief Rennick. And as a member of that group and somebody who spearheaded its creation now pushing 3 years,
yes,
this is an important step, and we've talked ad nauseum that providing this group with more autonomy and freedom, I think, will ultimately be a good thing. And we appreciate, or I very much appreciate, the people who have stepped forward and are willing to serve in these new capacities. And thank you for your work on this as well.
Thank you.
Are there questions for Chief Rennick? No questions. Well, that's easy enough. Why don't you hang tight, though, because I know you're up on the next agenda item as well.
Okay.
Is there any subsequent discussion on this item? No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by Councilwoman McClellan to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Perhaps you and I, Chief Rennick, can meet sometime later this week to talk about providing a written communique via the clerk's office to each one of these individuals acknowledging their appointment.
Okay, and there is a meeting this Thursday.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Then we transition now to new business item 16-156. This is police dispatch remodeling, and I believe Sergeant Basso will be joining you for your presentation, Chief? Very good.
Most definitely.
This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the August 17, 2016 memo from Police Chief Rennick and to approve or not to approve the police dispatch remodeling project Phase 1 in the amount of $66,759.66.
Move to acknowledge receipt and to approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Was that seconded by Councilmember Seal? Thank you, sir. I will turn it over to Police Chief Rennick and Chief Sergeant Basso. Do you have a PowerPoint presentation?
We
No?
actually have an overhead that he'll be putting down here, so
excellent.
I think Chase...
So we
if you
do
could
need
bring-
the screen lowered.
Yes,
though.
if you could bring the
Okay.
screen, thank you. And I think what I'm going to do is, Sergeant Basso certainly was fully in charge of this particular project. He did all the work behind it and has put numerous hours into this. And I think what I would like to do is I'd like to have him speak with you. If you remember, we were at a work session, I think about a month and a half ago during the budget hearing. This was brought up. Jay is back with drawings and figures for you. And so Jay, I think I'll leave it up to you.
Good evening. As you've heard and we've talked in our work sessions, that I put together a proposal for a remodel of dispatch to get current and updated furniture and ergonomical desks and basically catch up technology to what is current today. I've been able to get the 3 quotes for our Phase 1 part of the project, which is the construction and the furniture. And then there's some electronics, the voice recorder for our 911 and our 7-digit lines. That's a part of our Phase 1. New CAD computers was part of our Phase 1. I tried to break it up to make sense and for ease of the budget to split it up into 2 phases. So the reasons we chose our vendors or that we suggested vendors or it was in my memo of exactly why we chose what we chose. I'll be happy to kind of expound on that if you have any further questions.
Sergeant Basso, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Sergeant Basso or for Chief Rennick regarding the memo and the presentation about Phase 1 of the dispatch remodel job? Ms. Dillon, please.
I just want to make sure that with the furniture, you've taken into account different sizes, different sexes of dispatchers.
Those, the 2 desks are hydraulic operated, so they're stand up and sit down. So they move as high as you want them or as low as you need them.
Thank you.
Additional questions, Councilmember Gearbaugh?
It may just be appearance, but looking at this drawing, is that wall that significantly higher? Is that the wall facing out into the lobby? Or is that just a drawing?
This
Yes,
one right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the height that it's going to be during the construction. With the 3D drawing, obviously, they did the best they could to fit everything. So as you see it right there, the counter that's there now is going to be bumped out to that outer edge. Gives us another foot of space that is hidden underneath that counter. And the counter is going to extend to the wall that's extending out from dispatch. That'll be available for them to write, if they have to write some documents, FOIA requests and stuff like that. The spot right in the middle, which is right here, will be the ADA wheelchair accessible for all public to come in.
So if I roll up to that, what will the experience right now, in the future, when I roll up to it or walk up to it, how open will that be?
It will be completely see-through glass, so the appearance will be open. It's mainly there, one, for sound barrier. Oops, sorry. Sound barrier for some of the issues that we've been having, both sides of the hall, as well as safety and security. It just gives an extra barrier, but appearance-wise, it's going to be clear glass.
Okay, that's what I went. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Mr. CO, did you have a question or comment, sir?
Phase 1 implies Phase 2.
Correct.
When is that coming, and what would that be?
That will come very soon. We're getting budget quotes and stuff for our Phase 2, and part of our Phase 2 will be the upgraded camera system for the whole building. We're going to install a fob lock directly into the dispatch center, so the dispatch center itself is a little more secure with people walking in the hallway. Some additional TV monitors for the mapping and for the new camera system, some additional costs there. And then there's some additional furniture because we're getting rid of some of the true drawer cabinets that are lockable for our dispatchers. There's going to be some additional furniture that's going to get put into either the bathroom area or the back part of the dispatch area. So the Phase 2 stuff are the least expensive of that will be for budgeting. I wouldn't have to come back to you for that approval. Because the dollar amounts, it's just the catch-up stuff.
And still stay within the overall 88 level?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Seal. Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes.
The space between the partial height wall and the soffit up above, is that going to be enclosed? There's some discussion before about closing off the...
Yes, there will be basically two pieces of glass separated by a roller slider glass door. So daytime hours, that door can be open, so you can have that face-to-face contact with the public. And then in the evening hours or after hours or during council meetings when the noise is up, the dispatcher has the option to close it. I don't know if you're familiar with our old building when we were on North Maple. They had a similar type thing that was there, except for it was just plexiglass. This is going to be the same type of glass that's there now, just extended. There'll be two main pieces here and then one in the middle that slides back and forth to open.
Will there be a grill in that center section that slides so that if the dispatch person wants to talk to somebody outside, they can speak through that?
Yes, and then there'll be a pass-through.
Okay.
So they, if after hours, they can either open it up, but there'll also be a pass-through under it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any additional questions? Ms. Dillon?
When is the new equipment coming? The radio equipment?
The radio equipment?
Yes.
The radio equipment is here.
It just needs to be-
The consortium hasn't updated the radios yet. I know there's Councilman Seal can probably talk timeline better than I can. The equipment that I think you're referring to is the 911 equipment,
Yes.
which is part of the millage. So right now, the consortium is hiring a consultant to review the infrastructure and what we have currently and to best direct the Washtenaw County group into which direction to go into connectivity, equipment. Do we go with an AT&T solution? Do we go to a different solution, a cloud-based solution? So this will be in place, ready to go by the time that decision's probably made.
Okay. But nothing here will have to be retrofitted to the new?
No.
Thank you.
Ms. McClellan, did you? No, you're good?
I'm
Okay.
good.
Any additional questions for Sergeant Basso or Chief Rennick? Gentlemen, thank you both. Appreciate it. Chase, if you wouldn't mind raising the screen. Thank you. Is there any subsequent discussion on this motion? No? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, seconded by Councilmember Seo to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-157. This is Risden House Historic Marker at Oakwood Cemetery. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the August 18th, 2016 memo from Clerk Royal and to approve or not to approve the proposed wording and location for the Risden House Historic Marker contingent upon a funding source being secured.
Move to acknowledge and approve?
Thank you, Councilwoman McClellan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Seal. Let's start with the city clerk. Do you care to make any comment this evening? Would you pull that microphone a little bit closer to you?
This is just trying to get this moving forward before the 150th, so I see Jim Roth's
Okay.
here, he probably knows way more than I do.
Well, former council member Roth, who's also on the Historic Society Board, was really the person who was instrumental and helped spearhead this. Jim, do you have any comments you would like to make part of the public record this evening? You don't have to, but we would welcome those if you do.
Over 2 years ago, the idea of having such a marker was brought up by Lance Holland at our Historic Society. I was engaged to create such piece, and it's been in limbo for quite some time, and it was also brought up for the Sesquicentennial Task Force that it could be a part of it. And the date we're looking at for would be that week that we planned for our big celebration, so we're looking at October 9th, be the date for unveiling such. What I'm hope for tonight is knowing if there's any corrections that need to be made, so I can get the final copy before it's reproduced in its final stage. So I would like to have any corrections that you see. Since I was the one to create it and I'm not perfect, I'm sure there may be some things in there that I cannot see. So I would certainly appreciate your part on that. And far as the finance of it, it's still kind of in limbo, but I hope that we get things worked out prior to that. And if you know of anybody who'd like to contribute toward the effort, the prices comes in just little, I think you probably have a copy of the quotation, less than $1,000.
Okay.
So thank you.
Excellent.
And I definitely want to know if there's any corrections that need to be made.
Well, we'll open it up right now to the group, Mr. Roth, and see if there are any questions or comments. Let's start with Ms. McClellan.
Just a quick question. I noticed that it says that the new foundation is located on Henry Street. Is there any plan or any change that can be made to this to tell people where the house is, since the house still exists? And I mean, it doesn't look like it used to, but it's still there and people could find it if they were interested. I don't know if that's something.
That can be accommodated if that's the council's desire.
What do people think about that idea?
The reason it wasn't because it's not there in the cemetery, and it's really marked that place where the house was. That was the intent. And we want to keep the history rather brief,
Right.
rather than what it is now. It's what it was then. It was the intent behind it.
Any desire to add verbiage indicating where the current house resides?
I just think that, I mean, I live next door there, so I think it's
Sure.
interesting for me.
Ms. McClellan supports that. Well, how does the rest of the group feel? Mr. Gearbaugh?
That's fine.
Fine. Mr. Rhodes?
I don't know if the current occupants of the house might have something to say about that.
Right.
Yeah. Ms. Tahar, your thoughts?
Yes, that was my thought too,
Okay.
that it should only happen if the current owners of the house agree.
And I would agree with that as well. Ms. Dillon?
That would be my thought
Okay.
also.
Mr. CO?
And if there's sufficient space and
Okay.
plaque being considered.
So I believe that the current, well, Orange Risden's house has been retrofitted into several apartments, if I'm not mistaken, because I used to have a friend who lived there about 10 years ago. So the deed holder, I suspect, does not live there. I guess unless anyone from the group objects, if there's a way to make contact with that individual and ask if he or she would have any objections, and then if there's room to put something, we can go ahead and do it. But I wouldn't strain yourself.
I would rather not be the person to make that contact. All I am was the designer and creator of it.
Okay.
I extended more work into this than what's really ever been expected.
Okay.
I mean, if I could.
Please.
It indicates that it's been moved on Henry Street, and based on what it looks like and where you'd see it, you'd pretty much figure it out. So it's
Okay.
pretty descriptive here as it is already.
Okay.
I was just going to add, if council wanted to, staff could certainly make contact and ask the question, but if what the current wording is satisfactory, then absolutely would. But
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know how, if you'd have to contact the owner to just put the address even on the wording, you know, just say, hey, this is the house that it is, but if it moves.
That's what I heard from council, is that the concern was that the owner would need to be contacted
Right.
to ask permission to do so.
Right.
So I think the current verbiage is sufficient.
Okay.
Unless I'm hearing objections. No, okay. Are there any other questions, comments for Mr. Roth regarding proposed changes? Ms. Dillon?
I just wanted to ask the map, the outline. Are we actually going to have an outline of where the property stood? I know that was something that was discussed at one point, or cornerstones.
There should be cornerstones there now because they were installed probably 2 years ago. And I donated the blocks for them to be there. DPW put a foundation in, put the blocks on top of it. So if you look there now, they should be, the corners are indicated.
Just the corners, though.
Just the corners.
Okay. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? No? Mr. Roth, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your work on this. Very, very much. Is there any subsequent discussion on the motion? No, then it's been properly moved by McClellan, seconded by CO to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to the discussion portion of our agenda. First up is commission, committee, and task force reports from council members. Well, that was easy enough. How about reports or other announcements? I actually have several, if you'll indulge me. One, as a follow-up from our last meeting, when we convened into closed session for the purpose of conducting the city manager's evaluation, many of you requested that an Excel spreadsheet be prepared acknowledging how various council members ranked the city manager's performance in the 15 categories that were enumerated in his evaluation. So Justine Myra in the city manager's office did that either late Friday or early today. These can now be part of your records. And of course, if you have any questions, please direct those to either myself or to Justine Myra. And when you happen to see Justine, please thank her for her work on that. I wanted to note that, and I think I sent an email to this effect some time ago, there's a group, an advocacy group, who would like to meet with council members regarding a Line 5 resolution. That's the pipeline that has been talked about, especially from an environmental perspective. And I also believe that, Mr. CO, you mentioned that you had a meeting with these folks at one of our last meetings. I have as well. I think, Mr. CO, that your opinion and mine is probably similar, that this is something that council should perhaps voice an opinion on.
I think it's a worthy endeavor. I think it affects all the citizens of the state.
Indeed it does. So what I would encourage council members to do between now and then, or between now and our next meeting, is to try and locate an email from this group and sit down with them if you have some time, and then I would probably work with staff and maybe council members CO to prepare a resolution for your consideration at our first meeting in September. Okay? And then the final thing I have, and in fact, do you think you still have the email, copy of the email? I received an email that was addressed to me specifically, but it was CC'd to everyone on council, and it was sent on Friday at 3:37 p.m. from a gentleman who I know who lives on the south side of town, Alfonso Cruz, regarding the design and placement of brick pavers in the downtown. Did everyone see that email? No? Please take a look at it. Everyone on council was copied in on the message, and so was the city manager. He addressed the email to me, so I'd like to respond to him sometime tomorrow or Wednesday. And I just wanted to see what the thoughts from council were. But before I get any opinions or sentiments that you have, Mr. Campbell, did you want to address this as well?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a request to change the, I believe it's just on Ann Arbor Street, the sidewalk brick, the pattern. Mr. Cruz thinks that we could do better by having some sort of, at least to me, design. Versus the pattern, it's the modified basket weave pattern is what it's technically called. A couple things, just as far as process, you may recall the designs for both, because they're a little bit different on South Ann Arbor versus Michigan Ave, and they were vetted through and reviewed, and these designs were reviewed and recommended to City Council through the city design team, as well as Saline Main Street design team, and so this was approved to City Council. they're on a, they have a concrete base, or a concrete bed, if you will, and it has weeping holes so water and such can get away, so there's not the freezing, so the heaving and the thawing, that type of thing. So then there's also, on top of that concrete is a bed of asphalt that help keep those in place, the brick pavers in place, and so it's not as easy as just, some older technology, leveling out some sand, put down the bricks, put sand on top, and lock them in. So it's taken a bit of time to get them to where they're at now. My concern would be that there certainly would be increased cost to the city if we had, there's going to be increased labor to remove the bricks that are currently done and then put in something new, as well as design time. Then there's also a concern of time, because the project is already two plus weeks behind. This may or may not contribute to additional days. So that would be my concern if we were going to change it. I think it's, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I don't know that's a good choice.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I just want to open it up for the group. Since everyone received the email, though it was addressed to me, I do want to respond, but I want to make sure, one, if you have any questions for the city manager regarding his analysis of the request, I'm happy to entertain those. But additionally, I want to make sure that I'm responding based on what the consensus of council is. Mr. Rhodes, can I start with you? Do you have any thoughts?
Sure. When I first looked at the papers, I was a bit disappointed in their look also, but I think that a lot of it, when I saw them, had to do with the fact that there was a lot of brick dust over them, and so it looked pretty uniform as opposed to what we had looked at before, where there was more variation in the color. And I haven't been down there since it rained so much, so yeah, I agree with the city manager. It'd be really expensive to try to move them around now.
Okay. Mr. Gearbaugh?
We've committed to it. I'm not going to spend that additional money for that.
Okay. Ms. McClellan?
Yeah, just to clarify, I was out of town this weekend, so I didn't get the email, but he's just talking about moving colors, not the actual pattern itself?
Well, you can review the email. It was sent to everyone on Friday at 3:37 p.m. It sounds like he would like a pattern that is displayed in an arty, pretty, and creative way that people will say wow to, is the verbiage that this gentleman uses.
Okay. I know as a part of the design team that worked on choosing that pattern, a lot of thought went into that, and there's a lot of other options, and we went round and round and round with it. So I think to go backwards and at this point, cost-wise, doesn't make sense.
Okay. Mr. Hart?
Yes, I'm not in favor of going back and changing, and I think in addition to what everyone else has said, I have seen the colors now that we've had some rain, and they do show up nicely. And another thing that, though I'm not a designer myself, by listening to designers about this and other projects, lots of visual stimulation is not necessarily a good thing, and visual chaos can be the result of having too many different kinds of things to look at. So I think I'm very happy with staying with this design.
Okay, very good. Ms. Dillon?
I would say that the design team came up with a design for a reason, and I don't see a reason to change that.
Okay. Mr. Seal?
I respect people's differing opinions, but sooner or later you have to settle on one pattern. And this is the pattern that's been settled on, and a great deal of work has already been done. I don't see going backwards and going to another pattern that might be objected to by another person.
Very good. Well, I think I've got consensus. I will respond to this gentleman. Certainly, individual council members are free to respond to him as well. I hope to get a response to him either tomorrow or Wednesday, and I will be sure to CC the entire group and actually send my response to the same individuals that Mr. Cruz sent his initial email to on February the 19th.
Mayor?
Yes.
On a related issue, somebody's asked me questions about the grates, the metal grates, and as rusted and everything. Is that the final color, and that's how they're going to remain, or? I don't think that was really the clarification.
Sure. They are rusted and just similar, and I do have to follow up with them. I don't know if they're, but typically those are one of those metals that rusting is a good thing for future maintenance, that type of thing. But I have similar questions, and I do have to follow up.
Okay, thank you.
And I can communicate that out to council.
Okay, very good. Other reports and announcements from the group? No, then we'll transition to an economic development meeting, and I mentioned this to some of you. I'm in the process of getting dates from Saline Main Street and the Saline Area Chamber of Commerce to schedule a meeting to discuss our community's economic development strategies. The meeting would, of course, include Saline Main Street, the Chamber of Commerce, local business owners, other interested parties, City Council, and City staff. I've had lunch meetings with both John Olson from the Chamber as well as Riley Hollenbaugh and Jill Durnan from Saline Main Street. I had hoped to present some dates this evening, but I do not have them yet. So expect an email from me proposing 3 different dates, and if you could respond and tell me your availability, that would be great. Similar to what we did in the summer of 2014, I would be looking to host it here in council chambers. It would be a public meeting. Anyone from the public is welcome to attend, and I'll be reaching out to each of you once we determine a date to identify some agenda items or some items to discuss. I have several, but I'd be asking, I ask each of you to think about that between now and when my email goes out. If there's nothing further on that issue, let's transition then to the strategic plan. Mr. Campbell, do you want to comment briefly on this?
Sure, and I will try and make it very brief. It's just like we've done in the past, we try and do fairly frequent updates, and so this is of the new year, the new fiscal year. So you'll see in the red, those are some of the progress that we've made on some of those items. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the city manager regarding, basically it's the red line sections of the city's Community Vision 2020? Okay, Mr. Rhodes, please.
Question on the status for the wayfinding signs for Henny Field?
Yes. So the Building Healthy Communities Grant Program through the Recs with Parks and Rec, that is part of, we've made that into that part of that program, and so though there's dollars there to provide that signage.
And they have received that grant?
Yeah, that's the one that member Ms. Scruggs a while back had mentioned that My Parks used to be the Michigan MRPA, Michigan. Yep.
Do we have an idea when those might be installed?
They should be soon, because I know we have to have the money spent by, I'm thinking by October-ish, sometime in October, I believe. Yes, so it's...
All right,
so,
good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gearbaugh, please.
On the one comment where you say the city installed parking lot directional signage, when are we going to be removing the old signs? There's some old parking signs that no longer have anything, they're just sitting there blank, like in parking lot number, I can't remember, the one behind Comerica. There's the old wooden ones that we used to have as directional that had the hours and
Oh,
everything.
okay,
Now they're
okay.
just blank and they're just standing there.
Okay, yeah,
I don't know if they're abandoned or if they're
Yeah,
going to be used.
we need to we'll remove those, yep. I see Mr. Fordyce getting his pen out right now.
I wasn't sure if we were going to revamp them or not.
No, good question. Additional questions or comments for our city manager? No? Well, if you do come up with questions, concerns, thoughts, please feel free to call or email Mr. Campbell. Transitioning now to Sauk Trail Business Park lots 18 and 19. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Campbell. But again, I would reference some supplemental material that he passed out this evening. One relating to some questions, concerns that Mr. Gearbaugh raised. One is a real estate purchase and development agreement. And then the other one has a variety of numbers that I believe Mr. Campbell will reference in his presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to you. We also have Mr. Junga in the audience this evening. Good evening, sir, representing several interested parties. And I think there'll be a time in the very near future for you to comment and share some remarks for the public record if that is your wish. Okay? I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and make this short, and then so you all can have some conversation, and Mr. Junga can add if he so chooses. You may recall from the last, we had a work session, City Council had a work session with Mr. Junga and his development team for the proposed Ace Hardware store and Best Western Plus Hotel. So to purchase, the proposal to purchase the property is Lot 18 in the Sauk Trail Park, and for those viewing at home or in the audience that may not know where that's at, it's essentially right across the street on the south side of Michigan Ave from Rensselaer Farm. So Lot 18 and a portion of Lot 19, there's 3 lots right there that front on Michigan Ave, 18, 19, and 20, so 18 and part of 19, about 6.5 acres. The list price for one lot is $125,000 per acre. If combine or purchase more than one lot, 105. I know, talking with our realtor, Tony Caparisi, that prior to this proposal, when it was still zoned industrial, we had received he had received some interest for some developers, one or two big boxes type, and another smaller. And you may recall we also had the probably 2 years ago now, year and a half anyway, if not 2 years ago, we had the proposal for the daycare center. Again, they were still not zoned properly for those things, but those were somewhere in the area of 60,000-70,000 an acre. So market drives. So, but in any case, so the original proposal from Mr. Junga was $400,000 for the 6.5 acres. Also requested that the city would, at this 100% city cost, pay for the relocation of the DTE, the utility wires that are in the front of those lots on Michigan Ave on the south side. Those will be relocated to the south, so behind those lots. We just got a quote late last week from DTE of $225,000. And then also a cost, we have a realtor fee of 10% of the purchase price, and then survey work. Per Mr. Jung's proposal, the city would pay for all the survey work, and we have a number of approximately $3,300 for that work. So from the information that, and then, well, let me back up, I'm sorry. So then we had presented, we had a discussion, and when we got the quote, the cost estimate from DTE of the 225, we had asked Mr. Junga to consider at least splitting that with the city, and the response was to increase the purchase price from $400,000 to $430,000, but still, then the city would still be 100% responsible for the relocation of the utility lines. So real quickly, if from the calculations that I sent out, could walk through that and then open up for discussion or answer any questions. So $430,000, that's at 6.5 acres, that's $66,153 or so per acre. Minus out the $225,000 for the relocation, $205,000. So if you took that out, you could essentially say $205,000 for the 6.5 acres would be about $31,500 an acre. So in any case, so $205,000 minus the 10% realtor fee of $43,000, which is 10% of the $430,000, gives us down to $162,000. Survey cost of $3,300 brings us down to $158,700, and so some closing costs. So the net proceeds is going to be somewhere. Again, the closing costs aren't going to be huge. Someplace $130,000, $40,000, $50,000 probably net at that point. So I'll be happy to entertain any questions or.
Okay, let's start with questions. There are questions for Mr. Campbell regarding his presentation and memo? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Well, I have questions in terms of some of the debt and service that are associated with this industrial park first. so that we can understand what kind of money that is owed by that park before we start selling property.
Do you want to comment on that?
Councilman Gearba had sent an email to staff requesting some information, wanting to know what kind of debt that you have LDFA 1, LDFA 2. LDFA 2 is the Sauk Trail Business Park. As you can see, 600 outstanding balance of $602,088 for the bond. The last bond payment will be paid fiscal year 24 of $136,980. The other two columns, you have LDFA 1, which are the industrial parks to the north, on the north side, and then the TIFA, which is amoeba-like, and it does actually incorporate some of the Reddy's industrial park and such. Let's see. The last page, the capital improvement, that's the cost. You can see in fiscal year 18 would be design work for redoing South Industrial between US 12 and Bemis. And then fiscal year 19 would be the year that would be redone. There's also some possible projects for Sauk Trail Court, some public improvements if we were to extend that road, as well as possible water sewer in the public right-of-way. And then the last page says projected city capture tax revenue. That's essentially a 5-year forecast using a 2% growth in real property, 0 on personal property. As you again can see by TIF LDFA 1, LDFA 2, what they would generate. And then, of course, the personal property, right, is the state replacement. And so that's based on, and Mr. Gear, could ask specifically the city's capture, not the other taxing jurisdictions like the county and the library and the community college and the like. So you can see the replacement portion, that's what would be replaced, being forecasted. And again, because we don't know year to year, especially as being new as it is, the personal property tax replacement, that's why we've been conservative estimate and just kept it there, because we don't know what is going to change or not change, if it's going to increase or not. So that is I have to try and explain more in greater detail if necessary.
Well, let's stick with this particular aspect of the project first. Mr. Gearbaugh, do you have any additional questions regarding the information that you petitioned
actually,
staff
maybe
for?
explain it a little bit. One of my questions was to figure out how much the LDFA is actually generating at this point to repay the city its component that needs to come back to the general fund. And what I wanted to make sure that there's enough money that's in there that's in excess of whatever the operating costs and so forth that are in there to pay for that, because once we sell this property, we're going to have a very limited approach to be able to get the cash back. And so whatever we're selling this as a price at may be a detriment to us if we don't sell it at an appropriate price. And what I want to make sure is that we're covering and basically the investments that we placed into this property, and to make sure that whatever it's generating and into the future will generate sufficient funds that are more than just the debt service, because we've had concerns with that in the past because of the other industrial parks. And not in the fact that maybe we could make money from this industrial park, but potentially we have millions outstanding in our other industrial park, or $1 million outstanding in our industrial park, doesn't mean that we shouldn't be considering all our debt in terms of how we're handling our parks. So as we look at price and what we're selling, I want to make sure that council understands, although we did do some pricing on our other properties on Maple and on Monroe Street, those are very unique properties. They did not have the development capabilities. They do not have the water and sewer that is actually available to them on Michigan Avenue. The location, the aspects of what that entire property could mean in terms of what the city could benefit from it, and not from making a profit, but to make sure that we are successfully addressing the debt that is avoidable to the city. So I wanted to make sure that this information is available to council to understand what's coming in the door, what we still owe, and what potentially may be a detriment to us in the future.
Please.
If I may, Mayor, and just to kind of piggyback on that as far as a little more detail, this property is currently in the LDFA, but however, because the city owns it, it's not, of course, there's no tax dollars being generated from it, and because of the zoning change that would allow a commercial type use, once a commercial use goes into it, it will not be allowed to be part of the LDFA, because that's for industrial type properties, but it will not be allowed to be part, and so it won't generate dollars to the LDFA. It would generate general fund dollars, tax dollars when, owned by a private group or individual. But those LDFA dollars, so right now it is not contributing towards any of the LDFA revenue currently, and it would continue in the same format. And then this is just to Mr. Gearbach's point, at the bottom of the table where it says remaining repayment of soft trail advance to the city. You may recall probably maybe 3 or 4 years ago, started paying the general fund back for that $1.2 million loan, as well as a little portion of that 1.2 also is Major Street, but the lion's share is general fund, and that is being paid back currently, and with the last payment expected in fiscal year 21.
Additional comments for Mr. Campbell regarding this specific aspect of the properties and their potential sale. Mr. Seal, please.
I certainly understand the reason for the potential developer, to want to have the best deal possible to make things as financially sound for them as they can. However, this trend of trying to throw the costs back on the seller, that is the city in this case, somewhat disturbs me. It seems like some of the costs are traditionally borne by the buyer that are being proposed for the seller in this case. And I guess I'm just wondering whether that's a trend, whether that's necessary now because of the market, whether because we've seen that on these other properties recently, or something akin to that kind of expense being thrown back to the city in these other properties, whether that's something we should expect. I appreciate the fact that Mr. Gearbaugh brings up the impacts that he does on our budgets for these kinds of decisions that maybe aren't readily apparent otherwise. And I guess I need to hear a lot more, I think, about all of this before I really can form an opinion about exactly what's the appropriate way to proceed.
Do you want to comment on that? And I need to make a comment.
Sure. I guess I would ask, and Tony, thank you for getting here. My apologies for calling late. But I don't know if you would be prepared to speak to that question of what you've seen in your representations of your clients as far as what is the burden of the buyer versus the seller?
Yeah, first of all, thanks. Tony, why don't you come up to the microphone here? And actually, before you speak, I should have prefaced this entire discussion by outlining what I think the approach should be, and due to the fact that Mr. CEO sort of indirectly addressed it, I need to comment. So, Mr. Campbell and I received a communique from Mr. Junga providing his latest proposal and indicating that he wished to receive some sort of feedback in a timely manner. I think, as most of you know, and Mr. Junga, if you care to comment on any of this, or if I'm saying anything that's inaccurate, please correct me, sir. But most of you know that we have been working with him and his team since December of 2015 when he first sat down with city staff, myself, and Mr. Rhodes to discuss the potential of a hotel in our community. And our conversations with him about a freestanding Ace Hardware predate that conversation by probably 2 years, 2.5 years. So suffice it to say, to make a long story short, he's looking for some sort of consensus and direction as quickly as possible, and I, for the most part, find that to be reasonable. What I'm looking for tonight is, first of all, to address any questions and concerns you have about the latest numbers and his most recent offer. If there is consensus here this evening, that's great on how to proceed. If not, one of the options that exists would be to schedule some sort of special meeting or work meeting sometime perhaps even this week, ideally this week, to discuss some of these issues and to develop consensus. So again, we wouldn't necessarily need to make a decision or formulate an opinion as a group this evening. I think that would be great. If not, we could look to schedule a work meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, some other time if that was deemed appropriate and reasonable by both parties. Good enough? Good enough. Okay. Tony, I apologize.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry, I was mowing the lawn when after I finished mowing, I got your message, so I apologize for being late. But, Mr. C, to answer your question, there's no direct answer to the question. It's always a negotiable item. I think what has kind of thrown a wrench into the works here is the issue of the utility lines, which can and always are an expensive proposition and will always come down and impact negotiation on a deal. I have a very similar deal going on in Ypsilanti right now where the deal is just dangling by a thread and they're trying to figure out a way to develop their project with the utility lines continuously running overhead. So in this case, the original proposal asked for the city to consider going underground with the lines, which was ultimately very cost prohibitive. And now the proposal is to relocate the utility lines, so they're still above ground, but they're still extremely expensive to do that. So we're too early in the market. The market has improved. We have started to see some industrial land start to move. Certainly with the rezoning of this Salk Trail property to SPA 1, there's been more people looking at the property. I don't think we have enough information right now to really come up with a list of comps to say this is what this type of land is going for. This land is in between industrial. It was originally priced early on 3 years ago at probably at the time high for the market for industrial land. It's probably still high because of how early we are in this recovery, if this is in fact a recovery. So again, the short answer is there's no clear answer on what makes sense from both a seller and a buyer standpoint. You're right to characterize it from the buyer standpoint. Obviously, the developer wants to be able to purchase the land at the best cost they can, and of course, the seller wants to maximize their payback on the property. So I think Mr. Gerbach's kind of walking through what does the city have into the land and what's been the carrying costs, what are going to be the future costs to pay off whatever residual debt there may be. Also needs to go into the calculation as well. But ultimately, the city has to decide, I think, what is it worth to move the property, to get it developed, to get it back on the tax rolls, and to start to see some activity in that end of town. So will this be the only deal that we'll come across? I'm sure it won't be, but it certainly is a very attractive proposition right now that I think deserves serious consideration by the city, providing we can come to agreement in both parties. I personally, I think you suggested a number to Mr. Junga, and I don't know if that's been discussed or proposed here or not, but when we met this past week and reviewed the feedback that we got from DTE on what the projected costs were more realistically going to be, we thought that it made sense to go back to the developer and propose that more participation on their part in order to get that done. So.
Good for now, Mr. Seal?
For the moment.
Okay. If there are no questions for Tony at the moment, Tony, Mr. Caparese, if you'd hang tight. Mr. Jungo, would you care to make a comment for the record at this time?
There are a couple of things that we're confronting in this project moving forward, which is why I put the timeline as I did in the email that I sent you. With Mark Kirkendall's participation, he has a family to support. He can't go another 6, 9, 12 months debating, negotiating, trying to come to terms with putting a business like we proposed on this lot. I don't need 6.5 acres for an Ace Hardware. So without the hotel, I mean, I'm not interested in this lot either. We do have due diligence time in the presentation. And in that due diligence time frame, we're going to sort out whether there's any property issues, whether there's any capital or economic issues. Certainly, we have to go and get approval from the board of Best Western to put this hotel, and they're very excited about it. But the property, as I see it, was initially developed to be industrial property. We're talking about power lines that transgress across 3 or 4 properties at this point. It's unfortunate that the burden of this discussion has fallen on just a portion of this particular conversation. For me, the property's not usable or developable in the way that we would like to develop it with the power lines there. I've moved, I think, as much as I can. There's also a capital element to this in terms of getting things done, not only on the land side, but also on the hotel side as well as the hardware store side. And so there's a limitation to capital dollars. If I had another 150 grand, I'd be glad to give it to you. I just don't, that kind of money isn't sitting around for this particular project. In terms of where we are, initially, I think the last time we spoke, you guys were to get back to me within a week. And I think we're on week 5 now. And I think I had to squeeze a little bit to get us here. And from my standpoint, I'm trying to protect the interest in the integrity of the project. And I understand the DTE cost side is a big thing to consider, and I understand it. If it doesn't mesh with the numbers that you need to get an appropriate payback, then the project wasn't meant to be, from my standpoint. I'll stay with it until you guys tell me differently, as far as it goes. Mark has 2 business plans, one for a 65-room hotel, one for an 85-room. He's done a sketch of the upper floors with the rooms, as well as the bottom floor. He's incorporated some additional space for the meeting room based on some of the comments that he's picked up from folks. He's ready to go. He's I think since we've been together, he's left his position. This is all he's looking at. And so we have a limited timeline, and what I need is an answer. So I'll ask you guys in good faith to do what you can. I'll respect that answer in either direction. I'm not trying to pinch anybody for something that isn't coming to this project. It's not pretty on a lot of fronts, but we're still going to try to get it done. Questions?
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Junga? Thank you, sir. You might want to hang tight in the event that there are questions or comments that come up that you might be able to address. Okay. Tony, Todd, any additional comments at this time? You good?
If I could, just as an item, you may recall 207 Monroe Street, the city's currently under a purchase agreement for the condominium development. That was similar in that request was to have the city relocate power lines. Again, smaller project, smaller amount, comes out to about a third of the sales price. So a little bit more I think it's about, well, it's going to be a little less than that now. With the 400,000, the 225 was about 56% of the selling price. So it'll be a little less than that.
Very good. So again, to reiterate an earlier point, what I am looking for in the not too distant future is consensus on how best to proceed on this issue. If we're able to develop that consensus this evening, that is great. If council members, or a majority of council members, excuse me, have outstanding questions or would like some more time to think about this, we can work to schedule a work meeting on this topic. I guess at this point I'll open it up, unless there are any questions, again, for the applicant, Mr. Caparisi, or our city manager, city staff. I'll open it up for any comments that council members would like to offer. Mr. Hart, if you'd like to begin.
A question.
Yeah.
With regard to the cost of the utility line relocation, I believe I heard the word estimate. So can we talk about how dependable, do we know how dependable this number is?
Well, I think, I believe it's a conservative number, but coming from DTE, they said it was a cost estimate. So, I mean, it could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more. I don't know what percentage, but.
I think we should add, as part of the public record, I think one of the hiccups or the hang-ups that Mr. Junga referenced in his public comments was the fact that DTE took as long as they did to provide us with the number. So my hope is that that wasn't just bureaucratic foot shuffling, that was them attempting to do their due diligence and give us an accurate, precise number.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Seal.
Mr. Mayor, you offer the option of a work session. Mr. Junga, I know you're trying to move this as quickly as possible. But if we could have a work session sometime this week, it would sure go a long way to making me feel more comfortable about making some kind of an informed decision. I didn't see these numbers for the first time until late this afternoon.
Yep.
And I respect the fact that, Mr. Junga, you've kind of hung on tenterhooks too, waiting for this process to go forward. But as a steward of the public good, I have to consider a lot of things as well from our side in trying to determine how best to proceed.
Okay.
So I would favor a meeting.
Mr. Seal would favor a work meeting. I'm seeing Ms. McClellan nod in the affirmative on that. Mr. Gearbaugh, you be comfortable with that? Mr. Rhodes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I should acknowledge, I've been a little bit more involved in these issues than some of my colleagues, so I'm prepared to act this evening, but if that's the consensus of the group, I'm fine with that. Mr. Har, would you also appreciate a work session?
Yes, I'd appreciate
Or
a
a
little
special
more-
meeting? Ms.
more
Dillon?
time.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Junga, you are looking for consensus as soon as possible, ideally this week, is what you expressed to myself and City Manager Campbell in an email. Is that still your prerogative?
It is.
Okay. My recommendation, actually, Mr. Campbell and I spoke about this yesterday by phone. I'm happy to schedule something. The clerk can remind me we need a minimum 18 hours notice. Okay. I would propose, we had initially thrown out Thursday. I could make Thursday work in a pinch, but I'm supposed to be out of the area. What I would like to do, if the group is amenable to this, is do something on Wednesday, which gives us ample time to post it. I don't believe we need a significant amount of time, perhaps about an hour. Mr. Gearbaugh and I will be here, or need to be here, for a 7 p.m. Planning Commission meeting.
But I won't be able to make it from work.
You won't be able to make it from work before that? At 6:30, could you make it?
That would be pushing it.
That would be pushing it, okay.
We also have a 5 o'clock cemetery task force.
On Wednesday? I mean, considering the nature of this issue, I'm fine with being late to a planning commission or not attending a planning commission at all. I think this is obviously more time sensitive and carries more weight. But I'm welcome to do whatever the group prefers. Tomorrow would also be an option. And again, Mr. Junga, just correct me if I'm wrong, I just want to be very clear on this. Next week is probably too late for you, is that correct?
So what happens here is I've got a board meeting, Mark's got a board meeting at the end of September. We have some due diligence ahead of that to get done.
Sure.
We're trying to get this time-wise to the point where we can actually do some construction before the weather permits us not to. If not, we're going to put the project back well into late next year. At that point, I risk Mark's participation in the project from an economic standpoint. And from my vantage point, I mean, you'll have to find somebody else to do it from that point on, because he is the best candidate we have locally to get this project done, to run it. I don't have any other candidates in my back pocket. And he is of means, but probably right now he doesn't, right now he's of limited means, and he's got some period of time, and I can't expect to drag him out a year and a half on a project. He's got to feed his family.
Okay, I know, I respect that. Well, I'm just going to open it up for the group. What days this week would work best and what times? Let's start with you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes.
I can make Wednesday at 6:30. I've got a 5:30 meeting.
Okay, you can make that work, 6:30.
Yes.
Mr. Gearby, you can make that work in a pinch. Ms. McClellan?
I can't do Wednesday, I could do tomorrow, or I could do Thursday.
Okay. Ms. Tahar?
Wednesday at 6:30 is okay. Thursday and Tuesday are more difficult.
Okay. Ms. Dillon?
Wednesday is not available for me. I could do Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday.
Okay. Mr. Seal?
Thursday would be best for me.
Okay. Let's try this by a show of hands. Who prefers Thursday?
Thursday is actually best for me.
Thursday, okay.
I can
You can do
pinch
Thursday.
it.
Ms.
There
Tahar?
is a 6 p.m. drug task force on Thursday.
I probably would not be, I was planning not to attend that anyways, so that makes no difference to me, respectfully. Ms. Tahar, can you make Thursday work?
What time are we talking about?
What time are we
So
talking
I
about?
have a 6:30
I have a
6:30 meeting on Thursday, so I could make 7:30 on Thursday.
It's the same for me. I have a 6:30 session.
You can make 7:30 work?
7:30.
Yeah,
45.
7:45, 8 o'clock would be great, but yeah, I mean, I can work around it. I can push my other one up if I have.
Well, let me throw this out, maybe we'll come back to Thursday. It's unconventional, but not unheard of. What does Friday look like for people?
Friday's
I'm
okay
out.
with me.
Say, who said
I'm
that?
sorry, I am. Friday, I'm out of town.
You're out of town? Mr. CO?
I'm open.
You're open? Ms. McClellan?
It should be open.
You're open? Mr. Gearbaugh?
I'm here.
Friday, okay.
Can we do a Thursday at lunch or something?
Yeah,
So
that
it's
would be
earlier
good.
in the
that.
day?
I
Do that.
cannot leave work. I am at
I would actually love if we could do it in the morning.
Right. I
Right.
thought about that, too.
That would be good.
We've been all over the map, I apologize, but trying to find a time when 7 people can get together, and, we didn't previously talk about this, and we have to comply with some statutes in terms of posting. Would that work for you, a Thursday morning?
I'm extremely flexible.
Okay.
Owning my own business, and
Okay.
right now Mark is completely committed to the project.
Okay.
And I'm assuming those are the two primary people you want to see.
Yep.
I'll try to have Jim Heisler there as well.
Okay.
I don't know if I can get Mitch short notice. Mitch covers 3 or 4 states. If
Sure.
I can get Mitch here, I'll get Mitch here as well.
Okay. What time Thursday morning?
I can go from 6 a.m. until whenever.
I'd love to do 8 o'clock.
You have to drop somebody off
Seven.
at
I can't
high
do
school
8
orientation,
o'clock.
but other than that,
I can do 9.
Who can do, because I can't, I need to not, you can't do after 9, can you, Mr. Gearbaugh?
No, I can't do after 8.
You can't do after 8?
Nope.
7
I
a.m.
can make it work then. If I'm the holdout on Thursday morning at 8, I can make it work.
Can you, what's the earliest that you would need to start?
Me?
Yeah.
By 8, I have to be there. So I'm going to have to leave here by 7:30.
7.
You guys,
I can do 7 o'clock in the morning. I have no problem. I can be productive at any time.
I can do 7.
I can do 7.
You do 7?
I have to be out of here by 8, but, or
I think
7:45.
I want to limit it to an hour.
Probably more like 7:45, but.
Okay. Does that work, Mr. Hart?
With lots of coffee, yes.
Lots of coffee, maybe I'll bring some donuts as well, some bagels. 7 o'clock work for you? Okay. You want to proceed with the posting of that information?
Yes.
Okay. Appreciate everyone's flexibility. It's unconventional, but. Yes. Correct. Excuse me. Yep. So we could, because we want to at least allow us the ability to take action, it will not be a work meeting, it will be a special council meeting. So you will sit up at your spots up here at the dais, we'll have a discussion, we'll have guests, There'll be ample opportunity for public comment if someone from the public, God bless them, wants to be here at 7 in the morning. That's their right. But again, it will be a regular meeting. We're all clear on that? Okay. 7 a.m. Thursday. Okay. Do you have a comment, Mr. Rhodes?
Yeah, comment, question for Mr. Junga there. And you're probably not going to be able to answer this tonight, but it just crossed my mind while we're sitting here talking. I wonder if part of the reason why the numbers that you need to make this work are not as high as what we on this side would like to see is because you're purchasing a piece of property that you really don't have any use for 3 years or 2 years. You got your carrying costs that you're trying to cover?
So frankly, one of the things that makes the property usable is the fact that we came up with a joint purpose for it. And remember, Dave, when we started this back in December, I mean, frankly, we were just looking at trying to put the hotel in at the empty lot downtown. And so I needed to come up with a spot. I've got time to do that. I mean, if this was an Ace Hardware discussion, we'd have all the time in the world to get it done. And I wouldn't need 6.5 acres to do it. I'm not sure that I'd be looking at that. I'd probably be a tag along to somebody else who got there first if that property was really going to be under consideration. But the hotel allowed us to really utilize one of those parcels plus well. And the hotel is an immediate project. It's immediate dollars. So, and it's probably the sexier of the two projects, frankly. Knowing my time on the chamber board and the interest, the long-term interest to bring a hotel to town. And frankly, we haven't had a piece like Mr. Kirkendall here for quite a while, who's ready, poised, available, experienced, and is now ready to do it. So it's a little bit of magic in terms of timing. It's a little bit of magic in terms of two different business models being able to utilize that property. And the timing perspective of it is again, all driven by Mark and being able to get this thing up and running by next year, as opposed to letting it drift into the following year, at which point we lose him.
And you don't think Mark could move forward on his own without your cooperation?
I wouldn't speak for Mark in that regard. I mean, you can ask him that question, Dave. I've lived here for almost 30 years, and I've watched it not happen for that long, so let me play the other side of that coin.
Having thoughts.
All right? Yeah. Who's standing here tonight?
We all good then? 7 a.m. Thursday?
Thursday.
Thank
What
you.
else do you want me to bring? Or who else do you want me to bring?
I think having Mark here and Jim Heisler if they're available, but that it's totally up to you, Mr. Junga, whoever you think would be helpful. Again, we're going to, because of work schedules and other commitments, and because we scheduled this on the fly, we're going to try and keep it moving along. Obviously, we want to be thoughtful and give my council colleagues ample opportunity to raise questions or concerns, but my target would be to end by about 8 o'clock.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Maybe one of the things that would help me, if it was available at the meeting, would be some kind of feedback about the personal property tax that would be available from an enterprise like a hotel. And I don't know whether that would come from an office like yours or whether it would come from the assessor's office or somebody, but that kind of input helps me better reason about.
Okay. Between the treasurer's office and the assessor's office, we can get you that information.
Very good.
And in the interim, if anything else comes up, any other pieces of information you want, please direct that to the city manager. Mr. Gearbox.
Any other offers or potential offers that we have available to us, whatever information from that in terms of what people are paying.
Did you hear that? Just be prepared to address that on Thursday. Okay. Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you very much. See you Thursday.
So one other thing, to calculate part of that number, you're looking at either a $6.5 million or an $8.5 million investment, depending on 65 or 85 rooms. So when you calculate those numbers, you ought to do it on that basis.
Okay.
That does not include the property.
And that doesn't include the Ace Hardware either.
No, it does not.
Okay. Right. Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. 7 o'clock. Can you stick around for the end of the meeting? Okay. All right, moving on. Hopefully, Mr. Rhodes, I don't mean to put pressure on you, but hopefully you can be brief on LED lights.
I can be very brief.
Wonderful.
The current issue of Governing Magazine has an article on there about LEDs, and it states, among other things, that according to the American Medical Association, the bright white light they cast off is bad for a person's health and for the environment. And in June, the AMA declared LED streetlights a public health risk. And they are suggesting that those communities who put up LEDs not do the white ones, but ones that have a bit of a yellowish tint to them. And I'm assuming we're doing the white ones because that's probably what everybody else is doing.
You want to address that, Mr. Fortes?
Yeah, our LED lights are certainly whiter than the high-pressure sodium and mercury vapor that they've replaced. Where they fall in that color spectrum that the AMA has recommended, I don't know yet. We did just complete a retrofit of about 100 lights in June into July, and we've got more scheduled. They're not scheduled, they're budgeted. And I've got a copy of that AMA recommendation, and reviewing that, and I need to then cross-check with DTE on the exact spec of these lights and make sure we're compliant in there. Ours are not certainly the whitest, almost blue tinge. We're not that far on the color spectrum. We are closer to the middle of it, but where exactly that AMA recommendation falls in that spectrum, I'm not 100% certain.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of specificity on this thing.
Yes.
Who knows where it is, but I'm glad to hear that you're aware of it and looking into it, and we'll anticipate some information coming back to us at some point.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you both. Is there any other bit? Well, actually, I'll get to that in a minute. Let's go to public comments first, unless there's anything else to be brought up under the discussion portion of the agenda. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments?
My name is Jim Roth, and I live on 186 Anwood Court. Been a resident there for 44 years. My house and property is adjacent to the sewage treatment plant. My tenure on council for the 4 years, I kind of laid low and didn't make this a personal issue as far as the odor. And I want to thank the council for taking it upon themselves and listening to others rather than I complain about that odor problem. I've gone through a very long history and can mark as far as what's happened and so on. At this present time, with the present engineering firm that we have and equipment we have and all the money the city has spent trying to rectify this problem, I'm not sure if we're getting a money's worth. The odor has been worse these last few years than ever. And I think an engineering firm can do something about it. When our previous city administrator, city manager came in, I met with him, shared with all the information I had about the sewage treatment plant, and asked him he would go down and see if this work was done. He found many of the things weren't done. The council ended up getting a new engineering firm aboard. I think it's time that I want you to continue working to solve that problem. If you have to put special abatements where the odors are coming from. Even if things are open now, the general operation of that plant can be improved and make it bearable for the people. I think that far as it's definitely wrong that the city is putting out such odors and putting the residents there and other residents in such a predicament that you can't breathe fresh air. So I want to encourage you to continue on. Call task on our engineering firms that we hire. Make sure that they do the job. They can't do the job, get rid of them. But they've got you in such a bind right now because they have all the engineering specs. They have all the stuff. They have that as their property. If you get another firm, you're going to have to start from scratch. So they got you between a rock and a hard place. This is not where our city should be. So take that in consideration. I tried to make some of those points while I was on council gently, but they were kind of, heads were turned because this is the way the city does the business.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. Are there additional citizen comments?
I wasn't going to say anything. Mary Hess, I've lived on Canterbury since 1962. And in the last 5 years, the smell has become terrible. And when you cannot open your window at night to go to sleep, just think of the property values. Because all you need is a sound about, oh, you live by the sewer plant. And that's what I hear now is, well, you're living by a sewer plant. We didn't have this problem 10 years before. They used to blame it on the farmer's field, but then we had the odor abatement. So there is definitely a problem. It could be the sludge we bring in.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Are there any additional citizen comments? No, then I would note to my council colleagues, well, first of all, is there any other business to be brought forward this evening? No, then please note we have our next meeting this Thursday at 7 a.m. with one agenda item to consider the sale of Lot 18 and 19 in the Sauk Trail Business Park. And then our next regular meeting is on September the 12th with a meeting, with our next regular meeting the following week on the 18th. We do not have work sessions. Both meetings will begin at 7:30 p.m. If there's nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at 9:36 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Dillon. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman McClellan. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned.